United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good, Eugene. We'll have to like time that better so we're all on the same page. I feel like I was over trumping you there. All right, so let's recite our mission statement. To inspire passion for lifelong learning,
one student at a time.
Perfect, thank you. And Krista, did you want to introduce Sarah so everyone knows who Sarah is? Or
Sarah, do you want to? Sarah is one of our teachers and she's our new minute taker. Sarah, do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm the 9th grade English teacher. This is my 3rd year as a teacher at Avon Grove Charter. I actually did my student teaching at Avon Grove Charter in 2015. Then I worked in the High School Learning Center for a year in 2016. Then I taught in Delaware, and now I'm back at Charter and very excited to be your minute taker.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us, Sarah. So your first duty will be to do our roll call, please.
Okay, I can do that. Do I just say your names, right? And then wait for you. Okay. So Dwayne Degler.
Here.
Eugene Steger.
He said present.
Stacy Barno.
Here.
Robert Rainier.
Here.
Colleen Preston.
Here.
Deji Akinati.
Akintoy.
Akintoy, that makes sense. Thank you.
There you go.
Brian Ladman.
Not here.
Okay. Kristen Smith.
Here.
And Michelle McCree.
Here.
McCrae, but great.
McCree.
Thank you, Sarah, very much. So, as I said, we have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and move on. Any public comment that you know about, Kristen?
No, not for the work session.
Beautiful, okay. We really have nothing for the Board of Trustees. So we will jump in unless anybody has anything else we need to discuss from the board. Nope. We will jump into the head of school for the hybrid planning. So head of school, take it away.
Okay, so this conversation is really about, it's a pre-conversation for the board meeting for us to work through any questions that you might have as we discuss this in the board meeting. So I do have on this work session, Ryan, Taylor, I see Tasha and Holly, who is in some of our meetings today. I thought Jen Weaver was coming. I'm not quite sure where she is, but in any case, as I'm speaking, Holly, Tasha, Ryan, if there's something that you want to add into the conversation, please feel free. Just chime in. So we have been getting different data and different information from the Chester County Health Department. As far as even yesterday, there was new information that was provided at 4 o'clock. So that did change some of this conversation that we're about to have today. On Thursday last week, Dr. Marchese had his meeting with Avon Grove, and what he communicated was that his goal was to start hybrid model on October 12th. He was changing his Thanksgiving timeline. However, some of the guidance has changed already just based on his meeting on Thursday. So I'm going to present what I know from yesterday and we'll kind of go from there. Just like before, everything's changing day to day. So just ask questions as we go along here. So the Chester County Health Department is publishing data every Friday to the schools. What we would like to do is use this data to inform us in our decision making as we move forward in making a decision whether to go hybrid or not. We want a phased hybrid model, and we'd like to implement it starting October 12th. That is the goal. One of the reasons we're looking at October 12th is because the Chester County Health Department had already come out and said we need to be virtual until October 9th. So I'm going to talk to you about what moderate and high level transmission means to the Chester County Health Department in this next slide, in the next couple slides. But the goal is for us to get to that October 12th date. What we're going to need, because the marking period is quickly happening, we said that you could pick going virtual for one full marking period. And because that's happening in October anyway, that for us to use that as a standalone for being virtual, we're going to have to open it back open to parents. So what we're going to say is next week on September 21st, we would like parents to take the time from September 21st to September 23rd. They have 2 days to tell us what their learning intention is. So if you're going to be virtual, no matter what we decide to go hybrid or not, and you're going to continue to be in the virtual academy, you need to say, I am going to be virtual learning only. We want to extend, instead of a marking period, say a semester, and that end of a semester is January 22nd. So that will give us some real numbers and some timeline to do hybrid with these students for a longer period of time. So we would open it up September 21st. They'd have to decide by September 23rd. And really, there's 2 questions. One question is, are you going to commit to virtual learning or are you going to try the hybrid? And the second question would specifically only be, are you driving your student or are they riding the bus? The districts will have to provide transportation. We need to know whether they're riding the bus because we're going to need to know how many cars are going to be coming to car line. It is 2 at a seat on the bus, and it will not be 6 feet apart. The expectation is that they wear masks. So those are the 2 questions. So I know this is going to be a lot of information, and I really can't manage the Zoom while I'm doing this. So if there's questions that you guys have for each slide, I can stop and we can talk about this so it's not too much, or I can keep going so you can see more information.
So hybrid gets employed on October 12th and runs through January 22nd.
So I'm going to go over what this means and how long it means. We would like to, if you're committing to hybrid or virtual, yes, it would be till January 22nd. However, as I go through the model with you, you're going to see if our numbers increase to a certain level in a band, that might kick us all back to virtual. So what I'd also like to say to parents is if you depend on a child care program and you're going to lose your spot if you go to hybrid and then 2 weeks our numbers increase and you go back to virtual, you should probably stay virtual because the hybrid model is only going to be for parents that can go back and forth, because if we get too many COVID cases or there's COVID in our building, there is the chance that you all have to go back virtual anyway. So if your schedule is finicky and can't flip and flop, then you probably should stay virtual.
Is this a lottery selection or this is a parent selection?
Signing up. They're
signing up. They have to sign up. They have to pick virtual till January 22nd. That means that you can't come to the hybrid model at all. Or you pick that you want to come hybrid the 2 days a week.
Kristen, what do you, so the only question I have, and I think doing the re-sign up is great. Are we, or what are you doing to ensure that we have a response from every parent? Because, and the reason I ask, and a lot of it's, the parents need to be diligent enough to check their emails. So, I mean, that's on them.
I think what you're asking, Dwayne, is if they don't respond, is there a default?
So
I'm asking, Kristen, are you going to follow up, or are you just going to assume that they will be hybrid?
Yeah, we're not going to assume anything this time.
Right.
Because what happened in all of this was that when they did sign up, some of them said, I filled out the wrong information. I want to be hybrid, but I signed up for virtual. So we're not going to assume anything. So everybody's going to have to respond. It's not going to be, oh, you don't have to respond if you're going virtual. We need to know one way or the other what you're picking. So you're going to have to check hybrid or stay virtual till January 22nd.
Are you going to end up calling them like you did the
Probably, we'll
Yeah.
probably harass them through email and 411 calls first and try to do it that
Perfect.
way before we call each one, but that will be the plan.
Perfect.
Okay. So here's what the Chester County Health Department guidance said specifically. The recommendation to begin the school year virtually, regardless of the incident and positivity metrics, until October 9th. So we just talked about that. And what we said to parents in our board meeting was that, you know, we want to make sure that you, teachers and kids, got used to this virtual learning for a month. And we also said if you were going on vacation, this would get everybody kind of in their houses or in their area for 3 weeks. So if they had symptoms, they could work all of that out. And it would chunk this hybrid model so they weren't coming back trying to figure out hybrid model and virtual at the same time. So this October 9th was what we had already planned anyway, back when we did this meeting back in August and July, right? That's what we talked about, this chunking. So they came out then and said, we want to see how these holiday transmission goes and other schools and positive cases. So no schools, if you're a public school, you should be going back to school October 9th. If you're looking at hybrid, you have to do this till October 9th virtual. So then yesterday, as of yesterday, they came out with specific metrics to guide the transition between different instructional models after the October 9th date. So what I'm about to show you is all stuff that they issued yesterday, September 14th. And so there's very specific guidelines for these critical elements in how you decide whether you can go hybrid or virtual. Obviously, all the specific guidelines for the health and safety plan is something we already discussed based on masks and you know, hand sanitizer and washing your hands. Those things haven't changed. Some of the mask wearing, there's some conversation around that, which we can talk about, but right now I kind of want to just get through with you the hybrid learning piece. Okay, so there's two things. We are transitioning to a more in-person instructional model, and there are thresholds that we have to get into that are there are 3 consecutive weeks that we have to follow in this table. If we're going to do a more virtual instructional model, there has to be 2 consecutive weeks of something to move back to a virtual. So I'm going to show you what that means. It's this chart right here. So if you see here on the left, community transmissions, there's low, moderate, high, and very high. Okay. So it's incident rates 10 per 100,000. So if you have less than 10 per 100,000 and less than 5% positivity, you can do full in-person instruction, everybody go back to school. If you're between 10 and 40 per 100,000, and these and ors mean something. Between 5 and 7% positivity, you can do hybrid. Now, I'm going to show you another graph in a minute, just so you know. In the last month, we've been in this range, in this moderate range. Just Friday, so September 11th, just Friday, we bumped into this high range. And the reason why is because this and or. We have right now in Chester County 6%, so we're in this, it's almost 7, but we're in this 6% right now, okay? But we're 60 over here, between 10 and 40, we're 60, so it bumped us in the high because you need both of these and this is or. So you have to be one of these or one of these. But in any case, whether you're in the moderate or high, what they're saying is you can do hybrid or virtual and or hybrid. When they're saying you have to be full virtual, it has to be over 80 or 10% positivity for us to be fully virtual. So that was a lot of information.
Kristen?
Yes.
Is the number based upon per school district? So do we fall under the same, or is it just for the entirety of Chester County, or is it based upon?
The entirety of Chester County.
Okay, because I know initially there was discussion about school district by school district, which is really challenging for a charter school that draws from such different areas. Okay,
Right.
Thank you.
And at one point, like before Monday, what they were saying is you had to have 3 weeks of a decline in numbers. This is where things changed drastically on Monday. Now you need a band. So you have to, now you can make decisions based on these bands, this moderate and high bands. Before it was, it was strictly based on numbers. So now they're giving you this wiggle room of decision-making based on these bands. Okay. All right. I'll move on to the next slide. We'll probably come back to this, but we'll go back.
Kristen, who makes the determination? Is that based upon each of the school districts reporting, or is it based upon our own population?
It's all, what do you mean reporting? Do you mean who makes the decision to go hybrid or virtual?
No, the numbers compared to the 100,000, because we have a 2,000 student basis.
I don't know.
That's the county.
Those
It's
are the
not
numbers that
school.
the county releases.
Oh, it's county? Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Dwayne.
Okay. All right. So here's the information now, date of reopening. So we have October 12th is what we're looking for a phased opening. If what we already put out to parents is by September 28th, we would make the decision. So tonight, this could be just information, and we have a special meeting next week to make the decision on September 28th, what you want to do. We don't have to make a decision tonight, but what we told parents is by September 28th, we would tell them about this phased opening. What that means is there's 3 weeks of data that we need to look at. So we have the September 11th data, the September 18th data, and the September 25th data. Everybody following so far? Okay, I know it's a lot. So then October 26th, if we don't make these 3 weeks, that would be the next hybrid date that we're looking at. Now, if we did wait until the October 26th, we're not necessarily looking for a phased opening, okay? That might be a full opening hybrid K-12, because now we're running out of time, right? So October 26th, we were saying full opening. If that was the case, we would have to announce by October 12th, and we would have to look at the 9th, 2nd, and the 25th data. Same thing then, the next date would be November 9th, November 30th, the dates to announce October 26th, November 16th, and again, following that 3 weeks of band information.
Hey, Kristen,
Yes.
Brian Ladman's in the waiting room, so whoever's can. So he just sent an email, so I wanted to let you know.
Okay. All right, he should be in.
He's in. So Kristen, just out of curiosity, so if we on the 28th or whatever we have our board meeting, that special meeting, and say go forward, we're still going to watch it so something changes before the 12th and we have to pull it. Is that correct?
Correct. So the idea of announcing it to parents obviously is to give them enough time to prepare.
Just get ready.
However, when parents hear this information, they're going to have to know that we're following these 3 weeks of data. And every week, every Friday, I'm going to communicate where we are. So regardless, they're going to know where we are. And Chris Marchese said the same thing. So we were talking about making sure every Friday when we got this information, parents know, okay, we're at week 3. Here's where we are. Now, if we're looking at high and moderate, if we're at the very high, that's where we're going next. If we get bad information, right? If we get very high, that means something else for our county anyway, because if we're at the very high metrics, then we're in trouble.
And are you gonna send that message in parallel with him? I want him to send the same thing that we are to.
Yeah, I would like to. I mean, obviously I did talk to him, and based on his information on Thursday, wasn't on bands, it was on decreasing numbers.
Right.
So now he has to, like, he's not at this place now. He's now revisiting this information too, again.
Good.
Yeah. Anybody want to add, Tasha, Holly? Am I saying anything that I'm forgetting? Okay, Ryan.
One just thing to note is that if we go into that very high range, the 3 consecutive weeks will then start over, pushing everything back. So that starts back the timeline.
And special education is exempt from this because they have their own rules based on coming back to school.
I have a question.
We're on target for that, correct?
Correct.
I have a question. Could the date of reopening shift to one of the dates between what we're seeing in the left-hand column? So let's say week 1, September 25th is in the red. Could we then have the option of pushing the next starting week, I guess, to November 2nd? Or is it we're just going with these 4 dates?
Well, you have to have 3 consecutive weeks. So if we get
Right.
into that, if we get into that band, then it automatically will push us into these 3 dates, which then would lead us to that date of reopening, the October 26th, 9th, and 30th.
Right. So if we miss October 26th because we got in the red band on the earliest week,
Yeah,
then is the next opening date November 9th then?
Yeah.
If we're not in the red, or could it be earlier and after the 26th?
I just digested a lot of this today. I'm under the impression that November 9th. Ryan, that's what you saw too, right?
So if we're in the very high, I think there's a difference between like red, because you can be, I believe they distinguish it as very high versus high. So if we're in the very high where you have to go full remote, say that's on October 26th, the earliest then we would be able to go back. So say that was September 26th, the earliest we'd be, or sorry. If it was the 28th, September 28th, the earliest we'd go back to school would be the October 19th. So it pushes everything back 3 weeks, assuming that we come out of the very high, the following reporting period.
Right. Thank you for the clarification. And I think it's good to communicate this every week, because following this chart is hard to kind of get an idea. But if we hear, oh, we're clear this week, if we have 2 more, that helps week by week to understand where we actually are with where we fit with the data. So thank you.
And are we communicating this to the parents too?
Of course, yes.
I just have a quick, so say that we can go, like assuming we can go October 12th into a phased, and then the next week, then it goes to the very high. How are we sort of bouncing back and forth? Can that be pretty automatic after the 3 weeks again?
Yeah, so right now what we're anticipating I am not anticipating going in the very high. I would hope we don't go in the very high.
Yeah.
However, there's a good possibility with Labor Day coming up that we do get bounced in there. But you know, I'm hoping, because we had a whole month prior to last Friday's data where we were in the moderate range, that we live there for quite a bit of time. But there is a possibility, if you know, people are out in Westchester on the streets and Phoenixville, and there is a good possibility that we bounce back and forth. Yes.
And then we can do that. Like we can just, I guess, skip
technically
those,
go
remote those 3 weeks and then go back like the 4th week if it goes back down. I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah. So technically, yes, for the 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks that you had to be in that red band, in that worst, the lowest of the worst of the worst.
Very high.
And then you can go back, but there's that 14-day, just like you were quarantining kind of thing, that you can go back. But
so that's sort of better than the 3 weeks that you have to have in a row.
Right.
Like,
I agree.
okay.
So right now, like for instance, Lancaster, right? They are all open. Some are open 5 days a week and some are open in hybrid. New Jersey, Bucks County is looking to open.
Mhm.
And in those conversations, I know one school in particular, their elementary school is open, but their high school, because they had more than 4, I think it was 4 cases, they ended up closing for 2 weeks. Now they could go back. All their elementary school kids are still in school. So it could be based on building. It could be based on positive cases in your community, in your school, that you make the judgment how long you're back and forth. However, once you're in, they give you that 2-week span. Before you're not in, like we're all virtual, right? we have to have those 3 weeks to go back. So they give you that flexibility, those 2 weeks, that 14-day, once you make the decision and you're in and kids are here. But if you're not here, then you have to have those 3 weeks. So this is the only time really that you have to wait those 3 weeks out, is when you're not in school yet.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I
It's
took a
that
whole
was
day
very,
to process some of this, so I'm trying to.
Kristen, this, just looking at this chart, if you're going to share this, it's a bit confusing what you're trying to convey.
Right.
Even I understand what you're saying and these dates, but to someone looking at it, it's all over the place. I don't know if there's a way you can
Yeah, I'm thinking just
streamline it.
Well, I don't
Yeah,
even
just the
know if I
dates.
can, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
drop the
or
week 1, 2,
frontwards and
3 or
backwards,
something.
yeah.
okay.
it's how the county presented it, right? I mean, that's how the county reports come out. They're
Yeah.
sort of backwards like that.
Yeah, and it was today or yesterday at 4.
Oh, and it's
So
fine. I'm
trying to,
just saying.
Yeah, the
it's-
one I communicated to parents, I can try to, yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I can wrap our head around it for this, for, you know what I mean? But I don't necessarily even have to share all of these dates with parents if it's too confusing. They're
I
gonna
might,
see it at the
I might
next
give
board
the
meeting.
announcement, the opening date, monitoring, just those key dates. It's a bit much, that's all.
Okay,
And I think Dwayne's absolutely right. I think if we just did the date of announcement and discuss what the look back period is in kind of a quasi scenario, rather than putting up week 3, week 2, and week 1, parents would understand it better.
sure. I also want to make sure though that they have enough time to plan. You know what I mean? I've heard back when we were talking about this before, it was parents wanted their kids back in school, right? Now what I'm hearing is they figured out what they're going to do in this virtual plan, and they don't want necessarily this flip-flop, 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 what days coming back and going. And so that's when I'm going to stress to parents, if you can't handle that in your schedule that you have, you should probably stay virtual. I can't say that enough, because what we don't want is parents to not understand that this could go back and forth. This is to give kids that are really struggling virtually the opportunity to come back to school and have some of that face time. So if that doesn't work based on the schedule, I think it's important for families to understand it can go back and forth.
I also think that with the metrics, that most families have already figured out what they're doing and have their plan in place. And as long as we have the announcement dates and a colloquy about the look back period, that they understand that.
Right. I get that.
It's just very dependent upon where you live and where these students are going for these full day programs, because those full day programs are going to be dependent upon the larger community, not just our kids. So if they then, maybe one school stays in because our numbers go up, the other schools don't, it can just be really tricky. And I know it's mirrored in my day-to-day world. When we were looking at going back face to face, that was the biggest concern. People really start to pump the brakes on the reality of how do you really plan, because it can change tomorrow, unfortunately.
Exactly. So based on this phased approach, they're also recommending that we try to do a phased in approach in your buildings. And they're saying you should start with your younger population. So if we looked at a phased approach, there's 3 consecutive weeks of data in that moderate and high range table. So we were moderate all month, and then we had that last Friday high. If we continue just staying in the moderate or high, then if we did a hybrid, what we could do is we could start with kindergarten that week of 10-12, just kindergarten, where grades 1 through 12 remain virtual. By doing that, there's a lot that's going to go into teachers teaching hybrid. So it gives us to work with one band of teachers and be able to work out the kinks. So then when we bring in larger populations of kids, we can show teachers, okay, here's what we worked through, just like we're kind of doing now virtually, right? Like there's bumps in the road, let's figure those out and then bring kids in and make sure we work all of those out. Kindergartners are struggling, obviously, to be online virtually. So naturally, that's going to be a group that is going to be easier to bring in and be able to be more successful than necessarily what they're doing right now, but still having a lot of success. then 10-19, bringing the elementary all back that following week, K to 6, with grades 7 through 12 virtual, and then 10-26, all K to 12 hybrid. So that would be a phased-in approach that we started to look at today. The other alternative is if we make the numbers and we can bring kids back, we could just do all kids K to 12 on 10-12. So what I'd like to do is not only look at those Friday numbers, but also look at the districts and see what the surrounding districts are doing so that we can align. And if I don't want to disrupt families. For instance, if Avon Grove is going back on 10-12 based on these numbers and they go back K-12 and we're only bringing kindergarten back and their siblings and things like that, that might be more disruption. So we thought, if they're not going back until the 26th, then this hybrid approach might work for us. But those are the two options that we could look at based on what's happening around us.
What's the input from the other districts besides Avon Grove? From Oxford, Coatesville, which is where we draw also a big significant number?
Coatesville doesn't really talk to us. So, I mean, I'm not really hearing much, and it all came out yesterday, and most of them are just wrapping their heads around it today. So, I mean, I'm speaking specifically on our authorizer because I talk to them every day. Most of them haven't wrapped their head around what came out yesterday at 4 o'clock. I do know they had a meeting this afternoon, so I can get a better handle on that probably this week, but they're not at any place to say that. I really only know Avon Grove had their meeting on Thursday, but I do know that all districts are talking about it. Westchester's talking about it. Oxford, Kennett, everybody's talking about it, but nobody's locked into anything yet.
So how do you suggest we plan?
Hey, Kristen, this is Rob here. So you brought up a good point that if they had a child going to the charter school and a child going to the Avon Grove School District, that if they went all back in, but then we didn't go all back in, it might cause issues. Well, wouldn't it also cause us issues if we have kids in the lower grade and kids in the upper grades? Like, it'd be the same issue we would have here if we didn't decide to go all hybrid or versus grading it out. And I know it's important to get the kindergartners back. I totally understand that. We're trying to do that as quickly as possible. But that's the other concern is we have one grade going in, one grade not going in, and they have to arrange just for care for one of them versus two of them. So
well, I guess and this is me just thinking about older siblings, right? If kindergarten's going back and 1 to 12 is still virtual, then that high school kid that might be watching that kindergartner, they're at home anyway, virtual. So they're going to get them off the bus and still be there. But if all of Avon Grove goes back to school and we're doing this hybrid, then that kind of like high school kids at school at Avon Grove School District, but then 4th grader is home from the charter school. So that's what makes that complicated. Does that make sense?
yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, but you're usually not going to have a kindergartner and a 12th grader. You're usually going to have a kindergartner and a 3rd grader, and they're paying for help for someone to watch their kids. Now they're only paying for one kid, and how does that affect?
I get that. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to pick this model, it's more about if you're virtual and your daycare solution depends on that. And again, this is going to be one of those things that if you can't commit to that possibility of a flip-flop, you probably shouldn't pick this. But really to make sure that we are looking at that approach, it's the Chester County Health Department that recommended it, right? I think because if you bring hundreds of kids back to school versus little pods of kids, you're able to manage what your numbers are doing in your building, along with seeing Chester County's numbers week to week. Now, if they end up doing, really bad in the next couple of weeks, then you're not pushing so many kids back. You're gradually doing it. So it's really about playing those numbers game and how many kids you're protecting.
Out of curiosity, if we bring half the kids back or kindergarten back on the 12th, does a 3-week rule still apply for 1 to 12?
If you bring a group of kids back, my understanding is then if you have 2 weeks of bad numbers in the county, then you'd have the 2 weeks because you've brought kids back.
Yeah. So as long as we have someone in the building, then the 3-week rule no longer applies for the.
However, the special education kids, that's different, right? That's a different thing. Yes, but yes, yes, that would be how I understand it.
Great,
So
thank you.
do we have an opportunity, and I'm assuming this is planning out because this is the way you said the Chester County is recommending it.
Right.
But do we have an opportunity, because we have 2 buildings, to say, yeah, we'll bring kindergarten back, but we could also bring 4th grade back? We could
Yeah.
do 2
We could do
buildings.
whatever we want. We're the school. We can do whatever we want.
So we don't have to follow this.
We don't
this
have
is
to
what-
follow this.
Perfect.
This was me
No, it's
talking
okay.
to my directors today about what they gave us yesterday at 4 o'clock and what would make sense and help the teachers ease their way into something. But again, if all the districts go back on 10-12 based on those bands, it might make more sense, but we don't know what other people are doing yet.
No, I
I
just
think-
think it would be
Dwayne-
nice to have, if you could test it at kindergarten, you're going to break in that school and test it, and maybe you test it with, I'll say 4th grade, because that's the 1st grade over there. You
Mhm.
can then break in State Road, and see how that's going to work too. It'll give you a little beta test for both.
Yep.
Troy makes a very important point, because we have 2 sites that it may help us with teachers at 4th grade level versus kindergarten level.
Right. I mean, and again, if the districts all go back on 10-12, it might be everybody going back, but
Right.
like,
You
this
go
is just
everybody.
us playing, right? Just
That's
showing
good.
you the different possibilities of hybrid versus everybody versus bands, what they're recommending. It's kind of to give you all the information.
Good.
Okay.
Hey, Kristen,
Yep.
it's also that model, bringing the younger kids in first, in addition to the health department recommending it, it's CHOP and the CDC also support that.
Thanks, Holly. Ryan, is there anything you want to add? Because
Just the reason that we wanted to wait till have a 2-week gap before we brought in 7 through 12 was because they are transitioning the most between classes and teachers. So we really wanted to start with the students that were basically contained to 1 to 2 teachers, and then kindergarten because they have an aide in the class. So when we're doing hybrid learning, we could have that support built in to then know, okay, do we need additional support as we bring back more grade levels? So that was kind of in addition to what Kristen mentioned, that went into our thinking as well.
that's a good point. So I know I've been talking about these numbers for the last 4 weeks. This is a good chart to show you the landscape. So it's, based 4 weeks ago, we were at 147, and that was 28, 28.16, and then go into 152, 213 to 365. So they are rising. But as you can see, we were in that moderate level for the last 3 weeks. Then on September 11th, it was 365 positive case count in Chester County, which was that 69.92 10 per 100,000. So that 69, that remember, anything over 80 would be full virtual. So this wasn't a great number on Friday. So we'll see with the Labor Day numbers. I can't imagine getting to that 80, but 69, we're at 70. So that's not great. So we'll have to see what happens this Friday. Now, if you go down here, it tells you the percent. Remember, I was like, oh, it's between 4 and 10% or 4 and 5. This is the percent. So that 385 was 6.35%. To 3.48, 2.72, 2.54, 3.69. So again, that's where we're getting those numbers from Chester County. I'll give you a minute to look at that so you can see. So
Kristen,
this,
you're updating those numbers every Friday, you said?
yep, I don't the Chester County updates,
Right.
but yes, I'll communicate out to the parents every Friday.
Yeah, but can you, send us those numbers every Friday when you get them?
Sure. Yep, we can do that. All right. So then this is the hybrid schedule that we,
Sorry. Can
Go
I just explain something about those numbers if we can go
Sure.
back a slide? I just hope people understand this because this is something that is problematic overall. So if you look at week 1 on the bottom table, that number of all tests that are positive is typically catching people who are symptomatic. people who are sick and getting tested. And so that also captures anyone who's hospitalized who may get tested on a daily basis in a week's period of time. That individual continues to count as one case throughout that whole week. So you have to think about this as being a targeted population who's already showing symptoms, which is good and bad. It's not a cross-cut of the entire county when we look at that. It's not a group that's just walking around thinking they're normal. And so there are pros and cons, obviously, to looking at both of those groups. But keep in mind that those numbers are a little bit inflated, because if you do have testing throughout the week of the same patient, same person, that they're feeding into that as an additional case, and it's really not.
Thanks, Brian. That's a good point.
But Brian, you'll agree that we need to take some number, and if this is the only thing that we're being presented, we have to go with it at this point.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, we can't reinvent the wheel from that standpoint, but our epi metrics have been kind of questionable. And when you throw out these numbers, they can look staggering. But as you start to test more, especially people who are ill, which is something that we weren't able to do early on, you're going to find it. And if you retest them, they're going to be there. And we know with sports starting up and school potentially getting back, that you have people scrambling to look for testing sites. And so you are going to see increased number of tests, although in this chart, it shows that it's actually fallen by almost 1,000. So, that doesn't help my cause here, but the devil's in the details. And so it's not, I just don't want it to come off as being all doom and gloom.
Yeah. And some of the schools are, and you're right, some of the sports are requesting testing. So I know some of the private schools require testing, and the asymptomatic kids, I know one school in particular, there was 10 right off the bat that were asymptomatic that are in those counts too, because they're going back to school. I don't really understand the whole testing once before they go back to school, because and I talked to Brian about this last night, since he's testing kids, that is only good for that 1 minute. Then they go to Wawa and they go to the grocery store, and that could change the whole game in that hour. So I don't know if that's necessarily makes a difference.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what we talked about again, which is you can't stop the person who's asymptomatic, because we can't test everybody constantly and get rapid results. But we have to reinforce the need to keep people home that are showing classical symptoms of illness. They have to keep themselves out of that population that appears to be healthy. And that's that's something that's tough to change, that mindset.
Anybody else? Okay. So this, I just wanted to remind, because I know it's been a while since we've seen this hybrid schedule, which was Monday, Tuesday, blue, in person. That would be the first group. Wednesday, full remote. And then gold group comes to school Thursday, Friday. And then the red would be everybody that chose that virtual learning.
And I know you said this, those groups have already been predetermined, have they been notified yet, or you're waiting on that?
They have been identified. I don't believe, they're in Power School. I don't know if
you have time. I'm just asking you.
I'm not sure if parents can see that yet. I know it's in there. I just don't know if there's a tab that says that you can see it yet. I don't remember. Ryan, do you know if they know that?
So when it first went up, it was live, and see it since then, like that first day, it's been hidden ever since.
Oh, okay. Stacy, were you going to say because you've seen it?
I've seen it, but I thought my also understanding was that it was only going to be shown for the younger students, not the high school students or the secondary students. Because I know my son was my younger son, but it did not show for my 11th grader.
Yeah, I know it's there in the system. I just think that they probably turned it off because they didn't need it yet, but it's been predetermined.
Okay, I just want to make sure, with so much coming at them, with dates and that could change and this, and are you blue, are you gold, are you, where are you? So I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
I want to make sure I know what I do with my kids.
Yes, I will make sure that everybody knows what color they are. That was the point though of really giving them only that Wednesday deep cleaning, obviously, for you know, that cleaning purposes between groups, but also for kids not to be on A, B, C, D day. You come on A day, you come on E day. This makes it really easy, clean cut. So once they know blue, gold, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, it's an easy schedule to remember. So with that all being said, I mean, we have already approved the health and safety plan, which included that, you know, we would go back to school with that September 28th date, and here are the parameters around kids coming back to school. So technically you've approved kids coming back to school following that health and safety plan. However, we do feel like because this is a big topic that there needs to be conversation and a vote. So I would like to have a special meeting the week of September 21st to decide on what is the actual start date. Now we will get Friday's date, so we'll have two, I'm pulling up my calendar just so I can see. We'll have two data points, the 11th and the 18th. We will not have the third data point till on the 25th. And then that Monday, the 28th, is when we told parents we would communicate. So.
They have a special meeting on the 28th?
No, we would have it on the week before.
Yeah, I mean, we would want to make sure that we could technically get the 25th.
I would do it. I would like to have that number.
You want to have that number? I mean, honestly, if we are in the red in that high level next week,
yeah,
that's the 3 data point, doesn't matter, and then we're starting over again anyway. So if we are in there, I mean,
why don't you do this? If you go red, we'll know we have to wait 3 weeks, but can we push it? Let's say we're in this high or even drop. Can we shoot for the 25th?
Yeah, I think we can definitely do that.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so I will schedule, is there any, I mean, we were talking about around this time, or do you want to do it earlier? Because it's a Friday. I just want to make sure I have an idea so we can send out an invite so that it's there.
And we could all do it
5:30.
virtual. We could all do it virtual, so no one needs to show up.
Okay,
To help everyone.
yeah.
So if you want to
You gotta
do
wait till everybody's day's over too, Dwayne, like 5:35 or 6 o'clock.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I just mean, I know Kristen Smith has a long way to go. You know, I don't want anybody driving to go in town when we can just do it real quick.
Do you want it the same time as the work session so it's not confusing, 6:15?
Yeah, is that good for everybody? Just if it doesn't, raise your hand and say that doesn't work. I don't see any objection. Let's do 6:15.
Okay, great. And then the other thing was strategic planning. Obviously, this continues to be strategic planning because it's constantly where all of our attention is going. I know, Stacy, if you would like to be a part of some of these meetings, like or any of the strategic planning committee before that 25th, and you want to come to some of our meetings either this week or next week to kind of get a pulse check before the meeting, I'm open to that. So I thought maybe, you know, that's something if you want to email me and think about it and tell me your schedule along with the co-chairs, I'm totally fine with that. I think there is a lot of strategic planning happening right now. So I wanted to open that up to the strategic planning committee.
That sounds like a good situation, Kristen. I'll make sure Colleen Preston is on that committee with me. So, you know, we'll be following up.
Okay, that sounds great. And then I just wanted to remind everybody the September 24th is the Avon Grove School District meeting, which is virtual, where I annually present every year. So that meeting's coming up as well.
Is that out as a calendar invite?
Can we attend that by Zoom, or do we need to be there in person?
No, you can attend that by Zoom. It's all Zoom. And actually, I'll send out the link. It's not, they don't actually allow, you won't be on the Zoom. You would be on their like YouTube link like we do. And
They do it right from their
board
website.
members and myself that would be on the Zoom.
Kristen, can you have Susan send out an invite for that so it's on our calendars?
Sure, yep.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so that really is what I wanted to talk about at the work session. So just so that you had an opportunity to kind of walk through the data before the regular board meeting so that you could ask all of these questions. Is there any slide that you want me to go back to or that you had questions about? I know that was one of the.
I have one question, Kristen.
Sure.
Do you ever sleep?
No.
Thank you for all you do.
Appreciate that, Jean.
No, this was good, Kristen, very good.
Okay.
And we'll have any special meetings we need as this changes. You know, if we start going to very high, we can just, you know, we'll get all together and we'll get that going.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate your support, and I'll keep you posted in email even when I hear more about what other districts are doing as they digest this information, just so you have a good pulse check on where everybody is.
One question, Brian, what's your input on this?
I mean, I have all sorts of things to say, but I don't have a crystal ball. So I personally think that if we get anywhere above 7, we're in trouble. We'll probably be faced with a situation that we saw in the South and in the West, where we're headed back towards another lockdown, especially as the weather changes and it gets colder. But who knows? Maybe this thing will change and it'll start to burn itself out too. I just don't know. We just can't rely on a vaccine, and we can't rely on people taking it if it's here. That's something that we can't consider for the remainder of this year for sure. And kids are always the last ones to get it. It's not going to be tested on them. They're nowhere part of these clinical trials that are going on right now. And so, I don't know. We just continue to roll with the punches, and the administration is doing a great job, and we just have to go forward together. I mean, it's I keep coming back to that. It's really quite true. We're all in this together, but we have nothing to look at but this data. I probably would put my money on the fact that we'll continue to bounce in that moderate range, in that 5 to 7% PCR positive range, and that's most likely where I'm hoping we'll live through the winter.
Brian, this is Rob. I got a question for you. So how do you think now that it's coming fall and flu season kicks up, how are they, like, based on your opinion, how are we going to balance the flu versus COVID? What is your perspective on that? I'd love to hear that.
Well, we talked a little bit about that last night, and the real problem there is that you're just not gonna know. And it gets back to having to take yourself out of the population. If you start sneezing, it's too late. If you think about when you're shedding virus in either of these cases, you typically are not going to be feeling anything. So we're going to be reacting after the fact. And so I hate to say the old proverbial horse is out of the barn, but it is. The flu vaccine does not work very well. It never has, but it's the only thing we have that can kind of take the edge off of the disease. And if we're lucky enough to eventually get a vaccine for COVID, it'll likely do the same thing, where we'll be good if we're at 40-50% effectiveness. I think people will be ecstatic, but it's going to be tough to manage. It's going to be tough to manage normal colds. I think as everybody started coming back together, people have allergies, people have summer colds, and they're not all dying of COVID. But how do you not flinch when somebody sneezes or someone sounds a little weird? I don't think anybody knows. I don't think anybody knows. And we attempted to lock everything down to try to help the health system and not to overwhelm the health system. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. And then as we start to move forward, people go back out, cases rise. I think you've seen the reports. It's not necessarily that we're doing anything differently. I think doctors and nurses are learning how to manage the disease and keep people from going down south quickly. And that's probably where we'll live through the rest of this year for sure.
Thank you, Brian. So, Kristen, thank you. We're just going to move on.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything else for this meeting unless anyone has anything. We'll go ahead and we have our next meeting at 7:30. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Wayne, I'll motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. We'll see you guys back at 7:30. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.